Customer states, my BMW has started blowing smoke rings out the back. Very artistic and all, but I'm not sure it's supposed to do that. This Opel Astra rolled in because it had major brake problems after a gas station repair shop had done some work on the brakes but had forgot to properly secure one of the calipers because they were busy working another car. This car came in looking like this after the customer had let their grandson borrow it for a week while they were gone on vacation. This air filter had apparently decided to work extra as a terrarium. And this rusty car was in because the owner said he had a bit of surface rust on the undercarriage that he wanted the shop to give a repair quote for. The shop owner told the customer that it would be better if he instead took that money and invested it into a newer car. The customer told him to F off and just drove away. The owner of this truck had some complaints about his brakes being very loud. And this car came in smelling like a casino break room and looking like the ashtray had been managing the interior for the past several years. This garage had just taken in a new intern and this was apparently his first shift. This car somehow managed to roll in like this after the owner had raced his friend at a stoplight and heard a loud crunk sound and wanted to make sure everything looked alright. And this customer had fixed an oil leak on their engine block all by themselves using some JB weld, but it was still leaking. This customer had started renovating his brakes but had created a piece of modern art instead. Customer states, smells like a butt on a hot stove when accelerating, please advise. And this car came in with a really decent oil leak after the customer's father-in-law had done some work on the engine the weekend before. The owner of this Chrysler Voyager minivan had done some brake repairs on it together with a friend and wanted to check with the mechanic if it was still safe to drive. And this quad bike came in because it had troubles firing up and this is what the air filter looked like. The owner of this Honda Civic came in saying everything was fine and the car just needed a standard service. The mechanic kindly disagreed with the customer and told them that having a way to stop their car is a very important thing. And this SUV was in for some new tires and the mechanic went to check on the spare tire when he found that the customer had her own version of an aquarium in the spare tire well. Customer came in saying, but ATF and brake fluid are basically the same thing, right? And this coolant reservoir was doing its best impression of a bubble bath. And this car came in with a loud exhaust rattle at all speeds because the exhaust had come off one of its mounts after the customer had hit a large speed bump. And this customer came in saying, was rushing to get to work this morning and drove through a shallow puddle of water when I heard a loud bang from the back. This car rolled in because it had a starting problem. The mechanic opened the hood and found a wiring situation that looked like someone had tried to rebuild the space shuttle from memory. Turns out, the whole thing came down to a clogged up throttle body. The owner of this minivan came in because they felt the van had started getting really bad gas mileage after they'd been on a road trip across the southwest. The mechanic found that the top of the fuel tank had cracked and that the van had been slowly leaking fuel all over the place. This customer's Honda Odyssey rolled in because it had some drivetrain problems. The owner had recently been to another shop and was told that he did not need to fix anything, so he had kept driving until he heard a loud crunk sound. This truck was in because the four-wheel drive had stopped working. The customer said that he had filled the differentials up with O'Keeffe's hand lotion because that was the only lubricant he had on hand when doing some maintenance work on the diffs and had later forgot to replace it with gear oil. And this guy had done some work on his truck and also apparently applied a couple of layers of undercoating before getting rid of any rust. When the mechanic pulled the oil filter on this one, it came out deformed, sludgy, and bent, like it had been having a rough time for a very long time. Customer states, there's a draft in driver's cab at higher speeds, please advise. Turned out that the customer had hit a smaller manhole cover that someone had misplaced. This guy came in with his car because it had a terrible clunking noise after his nephew had done some suspension work for him for free. Customer states, car has been feeling a little sluggish lately, even though my brother patched it up and said it should be fine. Tell me your car needs a new water pump without telling me your car needs a new water pump. This car came in with some starting issues after the owner and his brother had installed a ground cable from the battery like this. The mechanic pulled the U-joint on this one and set it on the ground and found that it was happy to move in just about every direction a U-joint is not supposed to move in. And the owner of this car came in because they had a really loud exhaust sound after they recently had another shop install a lowering kit for them, which they had bought off of Facebook Marketplace. And this customer came in saying, was doing 120 on the highway the other day and heard a little noise and sort of felt something move beneath my feet. Can you check to make sure it's nothing serious? This mechanic had found the source of this customer's oil leak pretty quickly, almost immediately actually. Looks great. This customer had done some brake and suspension work on his car, all by himself, but had to come in because the brake pedal felt a bit spongy and he sometimes had a clunking noise when driving over bumps. This customer was on her way to drop the kids off at school when the brake pedal suddenly felt like a memory foam pillow. Turns out she had some major brake issues after another shop had recently done some work on the car. The owner of this SUV came into the shop saying that it feels like driving a fishing boat that's dragging its tail ever since they heard a loud metallic not too long ago. The owner of this car said that their brother had installed wheel bearings from a local scrapyard 2 weeks ago, but had to come in because they had a terrible noise and vibration when driving. Customer states, yeah, the dealership wouldn't touch it, but it starts every time. The owner of this Toyota Land Cruiser said that he did some work on the suspension by himself, but that he had started having a clunking sound ever since. The mechanic found the tie rods to be hanging on for dear life, only secured with a single tie wrap on each side. This customer came in saying, my buddy did some work on the car 2 weeks ago, but ever since there's a clunking noise and sometimes I get a bit dizzy when driving longer distances. This customer had apparently been keeping up with all the important maintenance on their car, just maybe not the oil changes. This Range Rover rolled in because the steering had started to feel strange after the customer's neighbor had done some suspension work for them for free. Customer states, my car has been a little sluggish lately, but I always change the oil on time, so I think it maybe just needs a sports air filter or something. Cars and women are pretty similar, just gotta rub them the right way until they get happy. Customer states, car sounds different. This customer came in saying that he hit a bit of turbulence on the highway. The owner of this car came in because they had some major brake problems right after they had replaced calipers together with his little brother, who's apparently called Lil Jimmy Bucksnort. Customer states, suspension was clunky, but fixed it himself. Wants to make sure everything looks alright. The mechanics over at this shop had a BMW X5 roll-in on them that had apparently decided it was done being a car and wanted to be a fog machine instead. Customer states, thinks there's a beetle in one of his washer nozzles chain-smoking Newports. And the owner of this truck had it in because they finally decided it was time for new brakes. I couldn't agree more. Customer states, I was just driving along, heard a really loud crack, and now the engine sounds like a blender. Please advise. And the owner of this car said that he didn't like the original color of it and that taking it to a professional auto painter was way too expensive, and figured that he had good enough ventilation in one of his barns and already had some paint lying around, so he just ended up doing it all by himself. Customer states, was revving it after an oil change, but then heard a loud crack and engine stopped. Turned out that the customer had forgot to refill the engine with oil after the oil change. And this truck had apparently been used as a submarine during hurricane season. The owner of this Dodge Ram came in because the engine had just given up on him in the morning as he was headed to work. The mechanics found the engine to be pretty much bone dry due to an oil leak caused by a bad oil pan gasket. The customer had been driving it like that for quite a while and hadn't noticed anything besides the engine gradually getting louder during acceleration. Okay, let's play a little game. Which one of these are bad? And when getting in and out of your truck is a bit of a commitment, you find solutions. Customer came in for some new brake rotors, brake calipers, and brake pads, but didn't mention anything to the mechanic about the major rust problems that their car had. This customer had replaced his water pump together with a buddy, but they had apparently not installed the gasket properly and had to come in because the car had started to overheat and leak coolant all over the place. The owner of this car had been moving some furniture over the weekend and didn't want to bother with renting a van, so he just bolted a metal bed frame straight to the roof, and you can even see where the bolts came through. This clutch came in, desperately asking for the mechanics to replace it with a new one. This car came in like this after the owner said he apparently hit a giant tortoise while on his way home from his summer vacation in Florida. The owner of this car came in saying her tires were basically fine and she just needed a rotation. The inside of every tire looked like a bubble wrap factory had moved in. The owner of this car had bought it just 2 weeks ago, but had accidentally bumped into a bollard when parking in front of the grocery store and noticed a little tiny crack on the hood and wanted the mechanic to have a look. This Kia Sorento came in because the customer said it felt much slower than normal and had started to smoke a lot at cold starts. The customer later confessed to having tried to install a new head gasket together with his father and that it went a bit so-so. He also said that they might have mixed up the camshafts when reinstalling them. Customer came in saying that they had their buddy help them swap the rotors last weekend, but now they've got a rattle. Customer states, I'm pretty sure I bought a Ford pickup and not a John Deere tractor. A quick welding job later and the tractor sounded like a pickup again. This customer had their truck in for an inspection 3 weeks prior and said, "Don't worry about it, my buddy's a great welder." Turns out that the weld wasn't welding. The mechanic who opened the hood on this one didn't quite know where to start. Whoever had done the wiring had been pretty creative and the air filter looked like it had been outside during Canadian winter. Smoky smoky. Customer states, clunking noises at highway speeds. Please check and advise. This sedan was in because it barely stops anymore, after the customer said that they had let another shop refurbish their old brake rotors and calipers, but hadn't reinstalled the calipers properly so the brakes had caught on fire. This truck came in for an oil and filter change, but when having it on the lift, the mechanics noticed the state of the undercarriage. When told about it, the owner apparently just replied, "Well, that just means I've got plenty of room for secret cookie stashes." Customer states, "My arms have been getting a real workout lately. Not sure if that's a car problem or if I need a gym membership." The mechanic found that someone had done a bit of carpentry work under the hood and the power steering had not taken it so well. This Pontiac Montana just rolled into the shop because the owner had a hard time passing other cars on the freeway after a recent oil change at a local lube shop. Turns out that whoever did the oil change apparently put what seems to be hair conditioner instead of oil into the engine. And this Hyundai Elantra rolled in because the customer said he thinks there's something off with his brakes. Turns out that the rear brakes had gone on a permanent vacation and forgot to tell the customer anything about it. Customer states, "Yeah, she's a little rough around the edges, but she drives fine. Just needs a couple new tires and she'll be as good as new." This car was in for some new brake rotors because the customer said they had a strange wobbly feel in the steering wheel. When the mechanics had it on the lift, they noticed that someone who previously worked on the car had tried adjusting the steering but had instead made the car pretty unsafe to drive. This car came in on a tow truck after the owner had been on his way to a job interview when the front end suddenly dropped. The upper control arm had snapped clean in half and the car was only 4 years old. This car came in with its engine totally destroyed after the owner's cousin had tuned it in his improvised barn garage just 3 days prior, saying that he had mostly worked on tractors and that an engine is just like any other engine under the sun. And this customer came in saying that he had a clunking noise for a while and had fixed it himself, but that it occasionally comes back and wanted the mechanics to have a look. This engine did not survive whatever was asked of it, and one of the pistons had even decided it no longer wanted to be part of the team. Mechanic states, "I messed up and I want to go home. And I also want to take out my vacation days while I'm at it. Please?" This Ford Focus came in on a tow truck after the owner had put a new transmission in it a few nights before, but had somehow dropped a bolt in there which had caused quite the mess. And this customer came in saying that a tire place had put a patch on it last week and said that it should be good for at least another year or two. This customer said that his favorite music video is California Love by Tupac and wanted a daily driver that reminded him of it. Customer states, did 120 on the highway the other day when they heard a loud clunk followed by a rattling sound. Wants to make sure it's nothing serious. Turned out that the customer needed a new engine, which was fortunately covered by his insurance company. And this plow truck had some wiring work done at some point. The kind of work that makes you wonder how it's still starting every morning. And this customer didn't give his full name when signing the repair order, but apparently just wrote M. Silikonovich. And the owner of this truck said that they might have a coolant leak, because they constantly have to top it up with more coolant. Customer states, "I've driven this car for years and she's always been a dream. Shifting is as smooth as butter every single gear. Well, almost every single gear." This customer had done their own DIY repair on their trailer hitch, but had failed a recent safety inspection and came in to have it repaired. Customer came in saying they hit a smaller bump in the road and have had a clunking sound ever since. This customer's Dodge pickup was in because the engine had started to knock a lot, and the customer said he thought it was because of a leak and had tried fixing it with some stop leak. Turns out the customer was dyslexic and had accidentally added liquid copper instead. Yummy. Installed coil spring clamps on all 4 springs, all by themselves. The mechanic found clamps on all 4 corners, each one worse than the last. This truck came in because it had literally started falling apart after the owner had done some work on the subframe by himself, but he got hit with some instant karma instead. And this car apparently makes its very own caramel latte. Customer states, "My buddy welded some stuff up underneath and it rides a little stiff now. Can you just throw some new shocks on it before Friday, cause I'm leaving town to go visit some family." This car was in for some suspension work, but when the mechanics took it for a test drive, they found the brakes to be pretty loud. This Peugeot 306 rolled in because the owner said it accelerates as fast as a 96-year-old getting up from a chair, and that it also makes its own pizza dough. Customer states, "Got rear-ended on my way to work last week, but she drives perfectly fine, just needs a new bumper." Once the mechanic told the customer the price quote, the customer just drove away. And this truck rolled in with some strange sounds after the owner recently lifted it at a different shop. And the owner of this car came in saying, "I always liked watching rally and wanted to try it myself the other day, but car has been overheating ever since. Please advise." The owner of this Ford F-250 had been on his way home from a fishing trip with his friends when something underneath the truck let go. He didn't think much of it and just drove it the rest of the way home, but was now in because he had no brakes. And whoever worked on this car does definitely not deserve to own a car in the first place. The owner of this truck complained about it not accelerating as it should and that it had started to smoke more than normal. The mechanic found the turbo to be pretty well used. And sometimes the brake rotors just need a little encouragement to come off. The owner of this car came in because the high beams and blinkers were constantly turned on, after the owner's friend had tried installing a new blinker stock for them, which they got off AliExpress. Customerstates drove past a construction site and took a little souvenir with me. Customerstates, wife backed into the garage door last Tuesday. Can you check if the antenna needs to be reattached? It might have gotten a little loose. This guy was filmed as he thought he was using a tire pump to pump up his tires, but it turned out to be something else. This car came in because the owner said it had started to clunk a lot more than normal after they had some suspension work done at a different shop the week before. This customer had apparently decided that their engine bay was looking a little too factory fresh, so they grabbed a can of bronze spray paint and went to town on it. This truck was in because it had started clunking at all speeds after the customer had tried adjusting the ride height manually by cutting the springs. The owner of this car came in saying that they have always done their oil changes at the same quick lube shop, but ever since the last one, their car had started to run unevenly and came in to have it looked at. The owner of this vehicle came in saying they had just installed some new suspension parts, but that the handling had somehow gotten worse afterwards. I wonder why. This customer's Hyundai SUV was in because some of their auxiliary equipment that they had installed did not always work, and this is what the mechanics found. Customer states, steering wheel vibration when driving on the highway. Please advise. Customer states, my car doesn't bounce nearly as much as it used to. I think the suspension is actually getting better. This mechanic was changing this car's wire harness and discovered that the customer had a lobster hanging out inside the chassis. This customer had topped up some AdBlue in the driveway before heading out on a long drive to visit some family for the weekend. He made it about 40 minutes onto the highway before things got quiet. And this car was in because it had lots of white smoke coming out the exhaust. Apparently, the customer had been replacing the head gasket by himself, but left the hood open over the night because his neighbor came over and invited him to a barbecue party. But the next morning, rain had almost flooded the engine. The owner of this car came in because they said they get a vibration when braking, ever since their grandson installed some new calipers for them. Customer states, I only hear the clunking when I'm going over bumps. Is that normal? Customer came in saying that his friend had told him that he could tune his car for him and easily squeeze an extra 100 horsepower out of it. But the only thing he ended up doing was putting the car on the back of a tow truck. The owner of this truck said that his brakes have been squeaking a lot recently, and this is what the mechanics found. This customer came in saying the ride had been feeling a little rougher than usual lately and wanted the suspension checked out. The mechanic got underneath it and found the frame looking like this. This guy rolled into the shop with his truck saying that shifting gears feels like moving a spoon through a jar of cold honey, and this is what the transmission looked like once the mechanics opened it up. This car had been sitting in the garage for a few months while the owner was away visiting family. When the mechanic finally pulled the oil pan, what came out looked less like oil and more like something you'd find at the bottom of a swamp. And this mechanic unintentionally proved that he has guardian angels by his side. And this Buick came in after the owner complained about it feeling kinda sluggish and that it had a hard time accelerating. The customer also said that the last oil change was only 56,000 miles ago and that he didn't think an oil change would do anything. The owner of this car was very confident the exhaust system just needed a small repair. The mechanic found the whole exhaust looking like this. This customer rolled in complaining about hearing a clunka-dunka doo-doo sound when pulling out of his driveway ever since another shop had done a wheel alignment for them. And the owner of this SUV came in because they still had an exhaust leak even after fixing it themselves. Customer came in saying, "The hood just doesn't want to open anymore and I have no idea why." This pickup truck was in because it wouldn't stop jerking when braking, said the owner. The mechanic found a lift kit that was really poorly installed and suspension that was only secured with some metal wires. Customer states, "Battery keeps dying, not sure why. I tried a few things myself, but nothing worked." And this Audi 200 was in after it had been sitting in a flooded garage for 5.5 years and the owner was trying to revive it again. Customer states, "My window is acting a bit strange." Customer states, "Buddy of mine tuned a truck for me and managed to make it 30% lighter by removing a bunch of surplus parts that I didn't need." This Chevy Silverado was in because it had started to accelerate sluggishly and had a loud and deep engine knock. The customer had apparently put a mixture of 10W60 mineral oil and vegetable oil in it because someone on an online forum had recommended it in order to avoid extra car repair costs. This pickup truck came in because the owner said it had started to feel a bit shaky after they had done some suspension work on it together with their brother 2 days before. The owner of this car came in saying the gear shift had started feeling really stiff and that it was getting harder to get into gear every day. Turns out the center console had been working extra as a piggy bank. The owner of this car had tried lifting their truck together with a friend, but it just ended up causing a big mess with a broken suspension and messed up drivetrain as a result. And let's just say that the gear oil was pretty sparkly in this one. Customer states, "She's been sitting in the yard for a while, but the engine runs great, just needs the brakes looked at before we put her back in service." This customer came in saying that their car has started to handle like a 95-year-old carrying a washing machine down a couple of stairs. This customer rolled in saying that he hit a larger garden gnome on his way home from work and wanted the steering checked. Hanging out with a girl that you like and then you leave to use the toilet and look down into your boxers like... Customer states, "Gently brushed against a curbside when trying to avoid hitting some road debris. Please check and advise." Customer states, "Car has been feeling a little more lively than usual lately, but I figured that's normal as it gets older, right?" This car had some starting issues, even after the owner had replaced the battery by himself. The mechanics popped the hood open and this is what the battery poles look like. Customer came in saying that they always do their own maintenance and do it on time, but had to come in because they now had trouble stopping their car. Customer states, "My check engine light has been on for a few weeks, but I've kept driving because the car still runs fine." Customer states, "Extensive exhaust rattles at all speeds. Please make the car stop sounding like a tin jar full of change when accelerating." And the owner of this Jeep said that his favorite show growing up was Pimp My Ride. When the mechanic lifted the hood on this one, the engine looked like it had been trying to send smoke signals. Turns out that the turbo was bust. Customer states, "Added AdBlue to the engine and now exhaust smoke has a strange color and scent, and the car doesn't run well at all." This Ford minivan came in because the owner said that they had a thumping and rattling sound when driving at higher speeds, ever since they had a quick fix repair shop do some work on their rear axle. The owner of this car was pretty sure his neighbor had done a solid job on the new suspension. Came in a few days later to have the hood checked out because it had developed what he described as a small bubble. Garage lemonade, anyone? This Chevy Express rolled in like this after the owner's father had tried installing a new transmission in it. The mechanic found the transmission was holding on for dear life and that the transmission lines had been cut. Customer states, car's been running hot lately and the AC stopped working, probably just needs a recharge. Also, there might be a small crack in the radiator somewhere. Can you take a look? This Nissan X-Trail came in after the customer's girlfriend had lent it to her ex-husband who had all about totaled the front suspension after he slid into a curb while trying to do a handbrake turn in front of her in order to try and impress her to get her back. Uh-oh. Customer states, had my car in at another shop last week and now it makes a sound like an angry cat whenever I start it up. Can you check it out? Customer came in with starting issues and a burnt smell 3 days after they installed a light bar that they got for $1 plus shipping from a Chinese website. And this customer came in saying, brake pedal feels mushy, please advise. The drive shaft on this one was holding on for dear life when the mechanic got underneath it, but then, well, it wasn't holding on at all. This Dodge pickup rolled in because the owner said that it had gotten really tough to stop and that he had to stand on the brake pedal to get it to stop fully. This car came in for a tire rotation, but in some magical way the customer hadn't noticed that their brakes were this bad and had just kept driving it as normal. Customer states, my car's been making a little squealing sound for a while now, but I think it just needs some WD-40. And this vehicle was in after another shop had done a pretty bad wiring job underneath it, which had left the customer with a number of electrical issues. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like and subscribe for more. Thank you for watching, and until next time.